Welcome everybody to the Lunacy Podcast. I'm Tony. I'm here with Dave and Dave. Dave Stevens, Dave Sterling. I'm Tony Pervenanzi. We come to you from the humble surroundings of my garage once again. And of course, we are on the BGN FM, BGN.FM network. And we are still there, which is surprising because I thought they would just kick us off after the first one. But they must like us. Also, I want to let you guys know we do have a new logo, which we actually paid money for.
Yes.
Which is surprising. And it's a great-looking logo. Your friend...
so my neighbor's
yes.
daughter,
okay,
does graphic design for Best Buy.
Okay.
And she does some freelance stuff. And I've seen some of the stuff she's done, so I was like, hey, you want to give it a shot?
So, yeah, shout out. Miranda?
Miranda, yeah.
Miranda is the official graphic designer of the Lunacy Podcast.
Yes, yeah. I turned out great. I couldn't have been happier with the way it looked.
Fantastic.
Colors
yeah,
nice.
BGN really liked it, by the way. Or the guy that I...
Good.
Oh, you got feedback from them about that? Oh, did they have to update their site?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. But it looks a little bit better than pictures of me and Dave smoking a cigar or a pipe and me on a what do you call it, Rascal at the State Fair. Right. So
yeah,
looks a little bit nicer.
I don't think I made the comments on the podcast, but I know I told you guys that I did like that logo. I really did, and I think
the old one.
Yeah, the old one. I thought that was kind of cool. I really did. From the first time I saw your podcast and listened to it, I thought it was unique. It was cool.
Yeah.
I'll miss it a little bit. We might have to go throwback every once in a while.
Well, sure,
and bring it back. Maybe add me into it somehow.
You know what we could do. Remember what was the name of that auto store? Was Pep Boys. Remember they had the three heads? We could do that. Yeah. You know, we could have the three cartoon heads.
You might be on to
something.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, that logo took me a whole about 8 minutes to make.
Well, it was a nice looking logo.
Yeah.
And then she put it all together and put the colors to it and made it look all decent, and now we have something, you know?
Yeah. We'll soon have T-shirts, stickers, and, you know.
Bumper stickers.
There you go.
I was thinking, maybe. So let's talk about last week's game, although I know the three of us don't really want to talk about it because it was a 2-0 loss to Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah. You know, I said in our conversations that honestly it's like I'm getting tired of being negative.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the only thing we can ever be with this team.
And I think we went through a phase a couple weeks ago where we were kind of getting on the positive side because we had some good games, but now all of a sudden we've fallen back to earth again, and we have 8 games left in the season, and we were talking about this for the podcast. We pretty much have to go 8-0 to sniff the playoffs this year.
Realistically,
unless there's collapses.
Historically, 8-0 that would give the Loons 24 points. And so from a historical standpoint, Dave Sterling brought up that number is usually around 55 points that you need. You also mentioned that it'll probably be lower this year, but if the Loons went 8-0, they'd finish on just about 54 points, 53 points. So,
and that's wishful thinking at this point because, as we'll talk about later, the next game is going to be tough because we're missing some key players.
I'd say that's an understatement. I mean, it would be an unbelievable run, and I think they just have to take each game one at a time and try and make improvements. You gotta let's assume they don't make the playoffs. I'd like to sit here and say, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. That last game is going to mean something. But let's assume they don't for a moment. They need to go into next season. Well, not making the playoffs, they need to go in with a positive note, a positive feel. Yeah. We need to see something out of those last games, especially when we get everybody back and healthy and done with international duty and we have a full roster. We need to see something positive.
So let's get into the last game a little bit, even though we don't want to. Do we have any positives from last game that we can pull out?
The thing that jumps out at me, I think, was the end of the first half when it was still a tie game. Mm-hmm. The Loons had some wonderful chances. Dave, if you want to go into detail on those for us, you could.
Dave's laughing about this because It was a tie game at the end of the first half.
The only thing
So that is a positive.
That's
I
one
guess,
positive, yeah.
The problem is it was a 0-0 tie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say. I mean, they did have some good chances here and there. To be perfectly honest, it's been now almost a week since I've watched that game, and I didn't make note of any of those chances. So, I mean, it was a livelier game than I anticipated it to be in the first half.
Yeah.
I thought not only did we hold them at 0, we also had our opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we bunkered down and just said, okay, if we can get out of here 0-0, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, we at least did some stuff in that first half. And that is a positive, but unfortunately, yes, I was laughing because it's such a terrible positive.
It is, and it's hard. I mean, it's the second 2-0 defeat in as many games. They lost, what was it, Dallas? Mm-hmm. The week before they lost 2-0. So they're in the middle. Fortunately they did score the 2 goals against LAFC. Was that the last couple goals they scored, and then they went to Dallas and lost 2-0, and then against SKC they lost 2-0. So I'm just starting to wonder where the goals are going to come from.
Well, who? I mean, we were missing Darwin.
Yeah. Well, maybe
the last 2 games, right?
Both games. Yeah.
So
that's
think
your
about
answer.
that, and there's your answer right there. Is that Darwin is the playmaker that we need on this team.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think before I have my comments on those goals that we allowed. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, are we depending too much on Darwin? I don't think we are. I mean, the reality is every team has their playmaker.
Yeah.
I think most teams generally have a couple of playmakers where we don't. But at this point, I don't think it's not necessarily a negative that we're depending so much on him. I mean, that's kind of the reality of what any sport really is. Mm-hmm. I'll draw reference to the Chelsea game this morning. Eden Hazard, he didn't score a goal, or yes, he did score a goal. He scored the second goal, actually. But everything seems to work around him. Chelsea's playmaker is Eden Hazard.
Yeah.
And when he's not on the pitch, it looks not quite as good as it does when he is on the pitch.
Exactly right.
And that's the way it goes. When you look at a team like, Atlanta's a fantastic example to continue our quasi-Atlanta podcast. When Almiron isn't on the pitch, I think they look a lot less of a superstar team than what they are with him. I think a lot of what Joseph Martinez does plays off of Miguel Almiron.
Sure.
You've got LAFC's the same way. Carlos Vela, a lot of stuff goes through Vela.
Mm-hmm.
Galaxy, you want a goal, who do you go to? Slayton.
Yep.
He's a playmaker. You want a goal that's not Slayton. A lot of times, goals come off of stuff that he does.
Yep. And that's what's been happening with Darwin is that he doesn't have to score goals for this team,
right?
But he sets it up.
Mm-hmm.
And going outside of soccer, I'm going to bring up a team that you're going to love. Look back last year at the Green Bay Packers. Okay, Aaron Rodgers goes out, the Packers suffer.
Yeah,
he is their playmaker. He's their quarterback. He's their playmaker. He's the guy that offense is built around. When he's not in there, they're not scoring points.
Right.
That's just the way it works.
And they don't play defense either.
Oh, they don't play defense. Yeah. Well, that's a totally different story. But so not having Darwin for the past 2 weeks has pretty much cut off our offense.
Yeah.
And so we're then forced to play defense. And as we've talked about in this podcast, we are not a great defensive team.
No, we're not.
We are, I believe this year, we are a score as many goals as possible team and then try to make it so that the other team doesn't score as many points as we score.
Right.
Run and shoot offense in the NFL, like I've talked about in podcasts before. So when Darwin's not there,
we don't have
anything.
Yeah,
it's over.
Yeah, and I think we can go into detail over and over about why we have problems on defense. But we've done it at least half a dozen times.
We have.
When you look at our problems on defense, they're represented by pretty much every goal. Again, last week I think I brought up, okay, we have problems on defense. It's communication.
Yep.
It's the IQ doesn't seem to ever be there. And guess what happened this week, or this past week? Again, it was communication. The IQ is a little, not quite as bad maybe, but it's still a situation where each goal had communication errors. And the second goal in particular was a personnel issue. Mm-hmm. And so if I can go through my analysis of the goals.
Yeah,
if you want to cry,
correct. Yeah, so we can start with the first. You want to start with the first one, or do you want to start with the second one because you feel there is a little more IQ communication issues?
Let's just go in order.
Okay, so the first goal was in the 47th minute. It was Crozet. Now here's my. You're gonna have to help me out. I can see it, but I can't think of the defender he got by or he shot the ball past. But then I just remember him looking back at Bobby Shuttleworth and almost being surprised. I thought he was surprised. I thought the defender was expecting Shuttleworth to have the near post guarded a little better than he did because it snuck right in there.
I'd agree with that.
Okay, yeah, because that was my impression.
That was Calvo, by the way.
It was Calvo, okay.
Yeah.
I think Calvo was surprised that Shuttleworth wasn't doing a better job of protecting that near post.
Yeah, and I think in my analysis, I put the blame on Calvo.
Okay.
But at the same time, because had he done a little bit more, the shot probably wouldn't have happened. However, I think you're right, and I saw other people on Twitter even argue that Bobby did a really bad job with protecting the goal on that particular play.
I hate to say it. I mean, he's done a fantastic job all year.
It's surprising when we're talking about Bobby making a mistake because this year he has done.
Unless it's distribution.
Well, distribution. You hate his distribution. Yeah. I don't like it either. But on the other side of it, in goal, he has done everything he could this year to stop goals from being scored by this defense. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And so if you look at the whole play, and sorry, I literally wrote out all my notes, so it might at points sound like I'm just reading something. Initially, I was thinking that it's Brent Kelman's goal, that it was his blame. And I rewatched it a few times, and it's actually Calvo that does all the crappy defending. And the reason that I thought it was Kelman at first was because he literally chased Rubio out of the box all the way over to almost the touchline. Oh. I mean, he was maybe 5 yards off the sideline. And at that point is when all the stuff broke down, because he left this huge void in the middle of the pitch. And as the ball came up, the communication started kind of going all over the place. Mm-hmm. So I think Kelman should have just let Rubio go. Chased him out of the box, just let him go. Come back down. Zusi's bringing the ball down. And Jerry comes in, closes down Zusi. And when he closed down Zusi, he followed Rubio. Well, I don't know that he necessarily knew Kelman followed Rubio. Mm. So all of a sudden you've got two guys on Rubio, Zusi standing wide open, and then you've got this huge hole in the middle of the pitch. And so here comes Johnny Russell wandering into the middle of the field, and he's just standing there. He's wide open, just standing there. And this is where my critique of Calvo comes in, because Calvo's off ball watching the entire time.
Yeah.
Johnny Russell's just standing there right at the top of the box. Mm-hmm. Rubio now has two guys on him, and Rubio saw Russell, kicked it in, and the cross is probably the weakest cross you could ever have. The ball kind of rolls right to Russell, and Calvo's like